Hello, guys. Welcome to this new episode of Mind Podcast. This is Aadit Kapadia coming to you on yet another weekend. As I promised last weekend, we did have two podcasts, one on history, one and the other on politics. So you had the best of both worlds in that. And this week it's a special podcast, so we're not doing a news of the week podcast, but we're focusing on something that happened in the last week, something that has set the Twitter world, the internet on fire, and something that it needs a lot of debating because of what we're seeing is the intolerance happening in the academic circles around the world. So I'm very pleased to introduce my guest this week on Mind Podcast. With me is Rashmi Samant. She's the first Indian woman to be elected the president of the Oxford Student Union, is a student at the Oxford University in UK. But what happened in the last week after her election just prompted so many strong reactions, including mine, where I was shocked with what happened. So we have her on Mind Podcast to talk about that, to share her side of the story, and to have a discussion on what is happening in university campuses. Hi Rashmi, welcome to Mind Podcasts.
Hi, Aadit. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
And
So
for the kind introduction.
no, you absolutely. I mean, you've been outstanding this week. Kudos to you for standing up for what you believe in. So, first of all, I have to ask you, Rashmi, like, how does it feel? Like the last week, probably all your phones have been blowing up with messages and all sorts of things, right? So, can you tell everyone what happened, sort of, because people have read reports. People have read reports that were based on your tweets or your statements or certain Instagram posts or God knows what, right? But I would like you to just give a brief introduction of what happened, and then we'll go into the crux of the debate.
Right. So I won the election, and then there was just chaos, I guess. So to put it very aptly, there was just too much chaos. Basically, after winning the election, there was a lot of bullying happening through
Mhm.
anonymous accounts. And then after that, there were a bunch of old social media posts that were being dug up from my Instagram. And then the captions were misconstructed and misinterpreted to sort of paint me as somebody who hated the Jewish community, somebody who hated the Chinese community, somebody who hated the trans community. And this entire narrative was taken to various student newspapers. It was taken to a bunch of places, and there was this huge outcry that I have to resign. I did apologize. I did issue an apology saying that whatever I said and did. And to note is a very important factor that these were captions from 5 years ago, from when I was 17. And it wasn't something outright offensive, that anybody would find outright offensive. It was just normal captions, just poorly constructed.
So,
Things you can find false
so
in.
So you believe it was, and they were taking it out of context. They were taking you out of context, and they were basically just saying, like, using something you might have just, said so 5 years ago, and it's not even in the right thing, and they were using to further their political social agenda.
Well, I don't want to say that they had any political or social agenda,
Yeah,
but
sorry, let me rephrase. Ideological.
ideological, yes, ideological agenda.
Yeah.
It was an attempt to further their ideological agenda, and it got so toxic that they did not want to hear my side of the story when I
Yeah.
tried to tell that, hey, this was why I put it, and
Yeah.
this was why I put it, and it's
Yeah.
not offensive because it's my culture, and it's how I was thinking at that time. And they were like, no, you have to apologize and show enough remorse, and that was the call of the hour. And then I thought, okay, fine, like, let me apologize, because there seems to be some people who, like, there's so much outcry. So maybe apologizing would, like, mediate this situation. And to note of this, I took down all my social media posts like 2 minutes, like 2 hours after winning the election. I literally archived everything and like cleared everything because it was causing so much outcry. And then
Please, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, when I did apologize, people replied to my apology saying your apology is not genuine enough. It's not, it's not, it's pathetic. It's just, I'm literally like groveling that, please, like, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
And then I was told that this is not done, this is not done, you have to step down. And then I stepped down. And even after stepping down, there's been so much said and done about me on anonymous pages, on anonymous messages,
Yeah,
to my email, to my personal accounts. It's just been harassment. And then there was this faculty member who wrote this
yeah.
appalling post about me, my parents, my religion, and it's still out there in the public domain.
Absolutely.
And
And then,
yeah,
sorry, not interrupting, but mind make. We don't want to dignify that idiot with, with reading out the post because it was a pathetic post. But for transparency's sake, mind makers, we at mind we did do a report, and we have carried those screenshots of all his posts, guys. So, and I will tweet the link to the report as well, guys. So please do take a look. But it is absolutely disgusting what he has done. Apparently now, if you talk about Lord Ram, that is communal according to the faculty.
yeah.
So that is what. But let me ask you this, Rashmi. This is incredible, right? I mean, no student should have to go through this in college. I'm not as old as people who follow me on Twitter think, and I'm not as young as people who go to college might think I am. That's a very flattering remark I'm giving for myself. I'm kidding, of course. But my bottom line is, I finished my bachelor's about a decade ago, right? And I can pretty much say that during college, sometimes our opinions were forming, right? You would have an opinion and you would not hold on to it. The issue, and the professors would actually help you navigate through their opinion, right? But it almost seems like the professors have an ideological compulsion to sound a certain way. And my god, if they display an open mind and embrace all kinds of opinion, including those that disagree with it, I don't know, god, what might happen. So here you are, a student who's saying that I'm okay accepting all points of view, and I want to hear what everyone says, and you have professors saying no, only one point of view is correct. What the heck has happened? Like, is has it been your experience that more and more of this culture is being disseminated on campuses across the world?
Well, I haven't been to another campus apart
No, but
from
when you
mine.
talk to other students, I meant like when you talk to your friends, people who have been to other universities in India or maybe in US or anywhere, do you get that sense?
Well, to be very honest, I am an engineer and I go to the MPLS division in Oxford, which is nothing but the most wonderful place because we are all engineers and we talk science and technology and logic. And I've never been exposed to this kind of conversation. And I think I was rather foolish to run for an election that's usually dominated by the social sciences and the
Right.
humanities department. And I did not know that, this is the scenario. And I thought, oh, wild card entry, it's okay. I'm going to add some, new colors into the scenario. And then all this happened. And that's why I was more unprepared than ever because my department even now is the most wonderful, the most supportive place, the most it's the healthiest place because we talk about problems of the world in a very technical sense, and
Absolutely.
we're all about solving it with with
Oh,
technology, with logic, with proper budgeting and armoring yourself, and it's all about solving real problems. And I've never had this kind of conversation ever with students on other campuses because all we talk, even if we are, is about, oh my God, we have a good teacher teaching us this subject or
yeah.
that subject. And we've had, this going on in our labs or that going on in our
Yeah.
labs. And we've got funding for this. And we think there must be more funding for that. And that's about it. And talking about
No, no,
politics.
I agree completely. I mean, first of all, you said the magic words that you're an engineer. I'm an engineer myself, and I completely agree with you that our conversations are all about solving the problems and stuff like that. And it's the most chilled out place, engineering colleges, that you can think of. Um, uh, go visit some engineers, guys. And you'll know what we're talking about. Um, but yeah, and it is the most, engineering colleges are some of the most diverse colleges across the world. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, if you go to America, if you go to UK, so this whole concept of diversity and inclusion, it's actually inherently built into many engineering colleges, where you do have people coming across the world, where you have professors coming across the world teaching you, and your collaborative efforts are there. So I can attest to the fact. But what surprises me, Rashmi, and there is a very interesting thing, right? What you said, that I'm not from the humanities thing, which is typically from where people who run for president might not be in engineering, and that is such a wrong thing. But it's a true sort of feeling across the board we have, where engineers don't run for office, or engineers don't run for positions in universities. And sometimes this is a message to all engineering students: guys, run for it and let nothing dissuade you, right? So do you think these targeting that they did, or the cyber bullying that they did, was to discourage future engineers to actually run for such positions, or people who might have voted for you, that no, you're only going to vote for our guys?
No, I wouldn't want to take the conspiracy that that much ahead, but I don't think that could have been the reason. But I think it was a total loss of context, and it was easier for them to deplatform me because I didn't know what this conversation was about, or how you're supposed to react to these things when this happens, or what this kind of diaspora is, willing to accept, or what kind of conversations they're having, or what kind of response they want.
Yeah.
All you do in science is basically tell your side of things, and then you have a discussion, and then both of you decide what's the best course of action, and that's it. And I thought that was going to happen, and I was like, hey, like, listen, this is my perspective, I think you need to hear my side of the story. And then that got so vitriolic that she's not, oh my god, how dare she even defend herself, or tell her side of the story, or even try to and even now, like, me condemning the faculty is, nobody wants to talk about it. The student community, they don't want to talk about the fact that I was stalked, I was harassed by a man almost twice my age,
Yeah.
on campus, where I am an international student. So this is a bunch of issues. This is a bunch of issues, and I'm being specifically targeted. My family is being specifically targeted. My pictures are up there, and this is a specific violation of a number of things, a number of stuff that's not allowed to happen. And my captions, my social media captions, they qualify as a number of things, but this doesn't qualify as anything, and there's no outcry out there whatsoever about it is just the hypocrisy of it, I guess, that that a certain faction in our society just wants to go out on a limb for things that they endorse, and not stay completely silent about things that they do not ideologically endorse, even if it's appalling, or even if it's disgusting, and even if it's horrific. They just do not want to it's not about justice, or it's not about doing the right thing. It's just about furthering ideological agendas at this point.
No, absolutely, and that's exactly what I wanted to focus. Right, when you talked about the professor and so forth, right? I was not going towards the conspiracy of there being a grand conspiracy, but it is an inclination, for like certain professors or students, that people who come to office or run for certain office should be from a certain ideological milieu, or should function within their spectrum. So if you do come from a different ideological milieu, and I'm not even talking about political ideology, the way people might look at the world, or the way people might interpret what is going on. I saw in your statement that you published, you talked about Cecil Rhodes and so forth, and we'll come to that. We'll come to your statement in just a second, right? I think it might have been their strong reaction sometimes is also to discourage people who might think contrary to what they're saying, that, oh, if you actually come, so we're going to go after you. And it's intimidating, right? Not everyone might be as brave as you have been since the whole event to come and give your point of view, because I'm sure you've been subjected to vicious trolling from the other side also. Like, people have been saying all sorts of things. I'm sure there have been thousands and millions of messages and support that have come your way too, and I'm glad people have stood up. But it is hard, and when academic careers are at stake, people do sort of take a step back. So how do you look at things in that context?
For me, it's personal. I just feel like I couldn't live with the fact that, there's a narrative out there which is so vicious, and, that I wanted to say my side of things. So it was something I really wanted to do. And that's the only thing that's keeping me going, even through this trolling, this vicious attack. I mean, I know that people have been super supportive. In fact, people from around the world have reached out. This has become sort of a global issue now, and people from around the world have reached out. But it's easier for the human psychology to focus on the negative things and kind of make that the center point of, one point of criticism makes you feel like, that was the product of your whole day, despite, you getting
Yeah,
10 times the positive, reinforcement. And
absolutely.
it's very difficult. It's very difficult. It's mentally very difficult, because you're a human by the end of the day. And everybody's talking about you. So for them, they're just talking about one person, but for you, it's each person just talking about you on and on and on, and having these opinions. And half of them don't even know you. So it's
No, and you want them to focus on the issue, right? You want them to focus on what the professor had said, or what you had said on the statement, or what had happened after the student election took place. But they don't focus on that. They are focusing on what you might have had to say, or why, the person, rather than the issue. Because the issue is so troubling. Like, are they going to do that now? Like, for people who may post something that they disagree with, are they like they shouldn't even stand for student elections? Like, what is the message we are sending out here?
I have no idea what the message is going out, or what just happened, because somewhere I'm still coming to terms with what really happened. And this was so multi-layered, because there was this faculty, there were the students, there were like a bunch of allegations, and half of them I still am truly trying to comprehend what went wrong. So it's really like it's a bunch of things, and it's so multi-layered with everybody being involved. There's the issue of colonialism. There's the issue of transphobia. There's the issue of racism. There's this issue of anti-Semitism. There's this issue of Islamophobia. There's this issue of being Sanatani, and there are so many issues that I feel like I suddenly need to, probably take a
How,
tour of the social
how,
sciences department.
how is you being a proud Hindu perceived as Islamophobic now by certain people in this? Like, what has that to do with anything?
I think the best answer would be the author of the post, which is a faculty at the history department. So, very qualified to give you an answer.
Yeah.
Probably been an academic for years before writing that post. So, probably knows so much more than me, and probably has a befitting, explanation so as to why it was deemed appropriate. But from my side of things,
Hmm,
it's just, that it's just I think maybe the negative connotation of our religion across the world.
hmm, hmm,
There's been, I think, of late a little bit of negativity going around
hmm,
Hinduism, and that it's a bit radical, or that it's a bit there's been a slight negative connotation, so maybe that has to do with the bias.
No, I don't think so. I think because if what I mean, if what he reads in one or two news reports has that much impact on him analyzing why you shouldn't be a student body president, then that means he's already made up his mind, and he might be hiding under the cover, right? Folks, if I mean, I'm going to take a slight detour. A lot of people in the previous episode, actually, that we did on Mind Makers, we talked to Vishal Ganeshan, who was actually chronicling the history of Hindus in America. And we actually talked a little bit about this, that how do Hindus who are born in America, who are don't aren't raised in India, so their connotation of Hinduism is very different from what we might be. I was born and raised in India. You are in India right now. It might be very different from what they is. So he was actually alluding to this, that how you need to how the diaspora also needs to phrase the debate a little differently. What is surprising is the fact that you had to tell this in your statement, that the fact that I'm a Hindu in no way makes me intolerant or unfit to be the president of Oxford Students Union. Contrary to this, I understand the value of diversity in true sense through my exposure to the intricacies, of the development in mind. I mean, Hinduism by definition inherently is pluralistic. So, I mean, and the fact is, we have to clarify this is unbelievable, right? In statements after statements. So, how do you respond to that?
How do I respond to that? That was my response.
No, I'm not. No, I agree. I'm saying, how do you? I was referring back to my first question. Like, how do you respond to like the professors and stuff asking for such clarifications? I'm saying the fact is, you should not be even be doing these clarifications, right? The fact is, they're deliberately misrepresenting it, and it's kind of troubling. So, how would you respond to that?
I think they know what they're doing, so my response is not going to change what their mind or their opinion, or it's
No
not going
doubt.
to stop them from making such statements in the future, or it hasn't stopped them in the past either.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I'm barking up to deaf ears, but again, I would like to repeat my statement, I guess, to them one last time in hopes that please listen.
No, because the reason why I quote the statement or ask you questions about it is, unfortunately, our world has become so audio video centric that even though I might have read the statement, and thousand others might have read the statement, a lot of people are going to come to this video and completely miss the statement or might not have read the statement, and there are some salient points of it that I would like reinforced, while we are having this conversation, because they're very important points. I mean, so and when you said that basically this was truly a historic election, right? The first Indian woman to win. The fact is, engineers, when we run for anything in any university, it is historic. So engineers stay away from it. You know as well as I do. Engineers are like, "Isme padna hi nahi hai." That is our general attitude to everything. So I let this not discourage you from doing this. But basically, what is shocking is your parents were dragged into all this by the professor. Like, this is the funny thing is, the professor is the one who's acting like a high school kid, and the student over here is taking the high ground by moral high ground by actually writing a proper post, and the professor is putting out Instagram posts. I mean, what kind of a troll is this fellow?
I mean,
I mean, it's just, the controversy is unbelievable. This guy is like a chota mota troll or what?
and to think of it, the Chota Motor Troll is still teaching, and academics, world class academics, come out of the school he teaches at. So I think it's out there for judgment at this point. I don't want to make any judgments, but it's just out there for judgment, in my opinion.
Absolutely. But I want you, Rashmi, to talk a little bit about what you said about Cecil Rhodes in the statement, which is such an important point, right? Cecil Rhodes is the man behind Rhodesia, as a lot of people might not even know the term Rhodesia. Look it up, guys, and how the term Rhodesia came into being, right? And how it was such a terribly, horrible track record that he had. Can you talk a little bit about what you talked about Cecil Rhodes in the statement, and what prompted you to take the stance that you did on him?
Well, it came from a debate well before the election, wherein questions were raised. Why are you running on a platform of decolonization? That was my platform. I promised that if I win, I would decolonize the entire syllabi of the
Mm-hmm.
University of Oxford and take down all statues on campus of former slave owners. That was literally my manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
So the questions asked were like, why are you trying to decolonize? Because it brought about globalization, without which billions more would be in poverty,
Mm-hmm.
and the audacity of that question. So I took a stand that that I am trying to bring about decolonization because we on our campus still have these slave owning figures hiding under the guise of philanthropy. For instance, the Rhodes Trust. We have a Rhodes Trust which brings in a lot of money as scholarships, and it's doing a good thing, but it is a bad person and his legacy hiding under the hiding under the guise of philanthropy. That's why I took a stand that he was no worse than Hitler himself.
Yeah,
Hitler,
absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. And that is a stand I took because I wanted to bring in the sentiment that we share, like, that it cost millions of people their lives and it was equally bad. And that colonialism was a bad experience. It wasn't something positive, or, I feel like the global north is very far removed geographically and, historically from the sufferings of the global south.
Yeah,
So,
and you are not demeaning anything, right? The fact that you had to clarify, it's just unbelievable. Like in your statement, you are actually saying that actually I'm telling you what happened in Africa was just as bad as it may have happened in other parts of the world. And instead of being questioned for it, Cecil Rhodes is being honored across. And decolonization is very important because the British history, like is being perceived, like they can't just whitewash the history of what has happened just in the decade, in the century that preceded us, by just saying that Arey, ye to dekho, last 20 years we have become so diverse that tikka masala is our natural national food. I mean, what the hell? like like that is supposed to whitewash the what happened 100 years ago, right? We're so culturally diverse. I think Britain is culturally diverse. I think Britain is taking important steps right now. You have someone like a Priti Patel, who's the Home Secretary right now, and an Indian origin sort of British politician. There have been progresses made, but that doesn't mean that you can't talk about the past, and or that doesn't mean that you completely look at the past with this rose-tinted eyes. Right. And again, I can't believe academics are the one who are discouraging this. They are supposed to encourage this, that you talk about this, write a paper, write a piece, and then they respond back to it with I mean, are we actually telling academics that the response to a book is a book and not an Instagram post?
this is this is a classic example of cancellation. Basically, I got cancelled from everywhere, like delete.
Mhm.
Okay. So
Yeah.
this was basically it. And it's easier on social media than writing an academic paper or coming to a forum, because then you have to be charged with facts and not
Mhm.
false accusations. And false accusations, they have a certain life cycle on social media, on all these vitriolic platforms, which I'm now considering leaving because because
Yeah.
of what's happened. And
Yeah.
it's just sad that I think part of the reason is because the academic in this case knew that he didn't have enough facts to
Mhm.
substantiate it on anything, and it was just a bunch of imaginary connotations based on a bunch of notions that he's had. And he just chose to use the social media because that's where the bullies are the loudest. That's where you can say anything and people will believe you for the face of it, and not bother whether it's substantiated enough.
No,
So
no, absolutely. And I think it's, well, complete your point, and then I'll come in. What were you saying? Yeah, sorry.
no, that's it. I was
Yeah,
just
no,
rambling.
so, no, what I was telling you was that absolutely that is the case, but the fact is, don't leave these platforms, because ultimately this sort of ebbs. But you are raising some very important points, and let the bullies not dissuade us in raising those points, because if we stop raising the questions that we do, their narrative succeeds, and one doesn't want that, right? So by the way, how does this work now that you have resigned? Or do they have another election for the students union, or what does it, or he gets
This is
alone?
a right action.
Okay, and then have you been approached by people like who told you please reconsider the decision or something like that after you did, or has there been no support like that from the community itself?
Well, the community has reached out, and they were like, they really apologized for what happened, and that I deserved better. A
Mhm.
bunch of them were, courageous enough to do that in the public forum,
Yeah.
and the police came after them, trying to discredit them and try
Mhm.
to rip them off their positions, and there were demands for them to step down from whatever positions they were in. And then even the few people, so this leads by example, right? So a few
Yeah.
people come and vote in public, and then they get completely stripped in the public for doing that. So the rest of them were like, okay, fine, I think we'll just stick to her personal chats. So there have been people wonderfully being supportive, but I feel like, the negativity is so strong and so vocal that even if they're in the minority, they manage to scare off, the rest of the people.
Yeah.
And It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, so basically you're saying the vocal, very vocal, intolerant minority has tried to drown out the tolerant majority. Because, I mean, for starters, you won the election, so the majority did vote for you, right? I mean, it is out there. So,
And to make a note, all of my social media captions were public
yeah.
during the campaign, before the campaign, for the entire duration that I've known my voters. So if they had any issue, they could have very well raised it during the campaign or just before voting me. In like, they could have just dropped me a message, hey, what's this about? Oh, are
But
you this?
no, I don't think they had an issue with you contesting. I think they had an issue with you winning. Because it's okay for her to contest, but how the hell dare she win? So that is this is the classic intolerance of the tolerant quote unquote liberals, that they say that they are absolutely okay disagreeing with you as long as you don't get challenge their position of power. But the minute you do, how the hell dare you disagree with my point of view? And I have this problem, this cancel culture on academic campuses, or the refusal to have a larger debate, is just basically killing academic discourse everywhere. I mean, wouldn't student discourse be just so much healthier if they actually would come to you with issues that they might have with what you said, and rather than like have a public debate? Yeah, why this rubbish sort of backstabbing on social media and things like that? Or baat karo social media pe, but that's not how you resolve issues. Are we going to resolve issues like that? So it does pain me. But let me ask you this, and we're moving to sort of the final part of the questions. And I want to ask you this question: would this dissuade you to think about taking like positions on campus on certain issues which you might find controversial? I'm asking a very honest question because I cannot get into the minds of students because I'm not a student myself right now, and I don't know how the campus culture is right now. It is from 10 years ago, but I would think many students, are so worried and scared that is this going to cause more controversy in my, academic career?
Well, I've been discredited a lot. I
Hmm.
think there's nothing left to, discredit me on. So
Hmm.
I think I'm going to take a stand because whatever I say or do is not going to damage me more after this. All the
That,
damage.
that, I say more power to you. That is very brave of you for saying what you do, what you did. But I certainly hope that more students like listen to this and get inspired and actually get run or come out in support. Talk to you, talk to the people, and question the faculty as well. That you can't just shoot and scoot, right? You can't just say something and get away with it. You have to be accountable for what you said. And if you are willing to accept or own up to the statements or the captions or the social media posts that you might have taken down, then they shouldn't have a problem. They should question you about it, but they shouldn't target you about it. But that's my thing. One thing I wanted to tell you about the decolonization part, right? I have a lot of friends who are working on decolonization, and when you go into an American academic campus, it's very different from what you see on European academic campuses, because the whole colonization part, especially with UK and India, there are certain people venerated in UK in a very different perspective. And taken Winston Churchill is the biggest example, where UK, the perspective of Churchill is one thing, but if you ask a Bengali about his role in the Bengal famine, you'll find a completely different response to it. So how does one deal with it, right? Does one talk more about them? Does one speak truth to power, so to speak? Or will the effort have to come from India within, with white papers about these people, to bring it to the attention of UK? As a student, how do you think we should approach this?
I think by the end of the day, you have to stand up for what you believe in. So
Hmm.
unless and until Indians take charge
Hmm.
and they propagate and they stand their ground, nothing is going to happen. We just cannot sit tight and expect
Hmm.
somebody to do the work for us, or somebody to advocate for us. We have to do it. Like,
Hmm.
I am doing it for myself. Like, my story was known to a bunch of people, like, but they couldn't do anything about it, no matter how much they wanted to. So
Hmm.
you have to take the charge and you have to do it. So the change has to come from within India. People in India should write white papers about it, and
Absolutely.
only then the change is going to come, because nobody cares enough about, people have their own issues, and nobody cares enough about others' issues to sort of go out on a limb for them. So
No, and absolutely, and this is ultimately all a game of economic power. Also, suddenly, if we get certain economic powers, then people will start talking about our issues. But when it comes to cultural, historic, social issues, we have to bring out our stories before they we expect the others to own up to their mistakes. And which is why, interestingly, what Shashi Tharoor said and in Oxford about 5-6 years ago, that 15-minute speech that he gave went completely viral on social media about the damage that the British Empire did, or the reparations debate, was very interesting. Now, unfortunately, now Tharoor says a lot of other things on social media that I disagree with it, but do watch that speech, because the fact is it hadn't been said for 65 years, in Oxford. So that's that is my sort of perspective on this all. But one thing I want to ask you, Rashmi, what has been your sort of takeaway from this? If I ask you key takeaway, because a week later, in the hindsight, we're all now a lot calmer, more sanguine after this whole controversy, right? I can't even imagine what you went through in the last 10 days. I mean, it's probably crazy. So, what is your key takeaway from this, and how do you view everything you do 10 days after this?
well, that nothing's as bad as it is at the moment. Everything, everything's going to, like, come to a pass, and
Yeah.
people are going to move on and find a new victim. So
No, no.
I want to I want to send a message to everybody that, before you put out anything out there on social media about anybody, please do consider being in their shoes once,
Yeah.
especially, before putting out any hate there.
Mm,
Our society has become so toxic that we can all, use a bit of kindness out there,
mm,
and we should also, give others the benefit of doubt.
yeah.
And we shouldn't be out there just to believe the worst in fellow human beings. That should stop, and that only that can help us go ahead, take our society ahead, and
Yeah.
start to remove the toxicity that's in there. So I guess a bit of kindness, a bit of consideration, giving others the benefit of doubt, and that's going to
Yeah.
take us a long way. That's
Absolutely.
my key takeaway.
Oh, it's a lovely, lovely point. And guys, don't say rubbish about anyone's parents, yeah. Like, I mean, I don't know why it has to be said. Like, we live in a civilized world. Like, why the hell would you do this, right? If you have a question of someone, ask them the question, hammer the question till you get a response as a civilized person, write to them, tweet to them, talk to them, but don't do all this rubbish. And it's incredible that we've come to this, and that the whole cancel culture has come to this point, that if you are saying that you are a Hindu, suddenly that makes you intolerant in their perspective. So now people should, like, what, start bashing their own religion that they believe in. I mean, because that ultimately that was the crux. Like, the title of your piece was basically, why are you demonizing? So isn't that strange that you find that suddenly for your beliefs they're trying to demonize sort of your statements?
Yeah, it's pretty much hypocritical that,
Yeah.
our views matter, your views don't, and you have these, so let me judge you.
That's the spirit. But you've been very brave, Rashmi. More power to you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Please,
much.
please speak up, and continue to speak up. Don't let this dissuade you, and don't let this get away from you. Get away from Twitter. Because it's a wonderful place to interact with people from all. There are a few idiots around, but that's okay. We have a lot of fun in ignoring them. But one thing, we have a tradition on Mind Podcast. We always end the podcast with a very light, non-political, non-newsy recommendations, because essentially Mind Podcast is a political news podcast. So, but anything you want to recommend, any book you read, any movie you watched, any series you watched, anything that came to your mind, what did you do to unwind in the last 10 days or 12 days?
Well, I don't want to say anything on record because suddenly I think I just realized that, there's been a lot of uproar on social media that, this book is that, this book is this, and there have been lots of racist connotations in almost every series now. The
Yeah.
cancel culture has found problem in everything. I don't want to get cancelled again by
Oh
recommending anybody
God.
anything.
Oh God. Any classic thing that you would like, anything.
Okay. The Godfather. It's a wonderful book. I think,
Absolutely. And a great movie as well.
yeah, and a great movie as well. And a disclaimer, I do not endorse any violence or phobia that it might insinuate. Just watch it for the story. I'm not endorsing anything.
No. I mean, unfortunately, we wouldn't have to disclaim, but that is the whole, that is the whole tragedy of this whole debate. That
And I'm
we
just too scared to say anything out there now.
don't
Recommend
be,
anything.
don't be. But maybe a few weeks later, we'll have you back on another podcast, and we'll look at this 4 weeks out, 4 months out, and get your perspective on this or other issues, and it'll be a lot of fun
A
discussing
lot
it.
of fun, definitely. Yeah.
My recommendation, folks, this week is it's actually I want you guys to read about a couple of regional authors, that whatever language you are in. If you speak Hindi, if you speak Gujarati, if you speak Kannada, find some regional books and read it. I have a lot of Gujarati authors that sometimes I read. I also try to read Hindi books. Sometimes I find that when all we read is English books, all we read is books that are talking about contemporary or fiction or something, our worldview sort of shortens to a very Western sort of culture of thing. But read some Indic books and broaden your horizon and see what these great men had to say. They did not say it in English, they said it in the language that's our mother tongue. And sometimes when you find that, it's fantastic. So that is my recommendation. I'm reading a couple of Gujarati books right now and some poems, and I'll tweet the links out to those as well. Dhoomketu is a brilliant author whose books we've reviewed as well on Mind Makers. But thank you so much, Rashmi, for joining us. This has been a truly wonderful conversation, and
Likewise.
keep fighting the good fight. We'll hope to have many such conversations with you in the future.
Bye.
And please subscribe to us on YouTube, guys. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. We'll be back with a new podcast very, very soon. Thank you all for joining Mind Makers this week.